Our speaker today is a former professional tennis player and one of America's leading businessmen. Chad Foster is the guy who developed the soft rubber playground surface that you have seen on McDonald's playlands around the world. The rubber surface he developed is made from recycled tires, and sales of that product reached $20 million. Chad now travels around the country speaking to young people like you about what it takes to succeed in the real world, and more importantly, what the real definition of success might be. Chad is the best-selling author of 3 books, Teenagers Preparing for the Real World, Financial Literacy for Teens, and Career Readiness for Teens, and these books have been read by more than 1 million students. Finally, for 8 years, Chad was also host of his own television show, Fly Fishing America, seen on ESPN. So please welcome our special guest speaker, Chad Foster.
Good morning. How are you? Liars. How many of you are tired? See? All right, wait, try it again now. So I say good morning, you say good morning. I said, how are you doing? And now you say, tired. I know. Everywhere I go. Every time I get somewhere, if it's in the morning, everybody's tired. So I sat back here, I watched everybody walk in, and it was clear you were tired again. I've been trying to figure this out for 4 years, so I've been doing a little homework, a little research, and now I finally understand why you're so tired when you get to school in the morning. It's very simple. School starts too early. Yep. I'm thinking school should start at like 10 o'clock. For you, but the teachers can still come at 7. All right. Okay, a little housekeeping homework for me. I always do this wherever I go. You heard that I developed the playground surface that you've been on at McDonald's. The question is, how many of you have ever been on the playgrounds at McDonald's? Raise your hand. Come on, ever. So the really cool people up here, they're going, ever. All right, I already knew that. Now, the real question, though, which I'm a little scared to ask, but I will, how many of you still go to the playgrounds at McDonald's? I want everybody to look over here and see this table. Raise your hand. Okay, all right. Still go to the playgrounds at McDonald's. That right there, my friends, is just a little bit sick. What are you thinking, anyway? What do you do on those playgrounds? Don't answer that question. I don't want to know. Speaking of those playgrounds, someone asked me on the plane last night, they said, well, how did you come up with the idea for that playground surface? And I said, well, it really wasn't that difficult. I, years ago, was building tennis courts and running tracks in our little business, and I built a tennis court for a guy that I stayed in touch with for a few years, a guy I didn't know, a total stranger, but I stayed in touch with him. Remember that, okay? I stayed in touch with him. Don't forget that. And anyway, about 5 years later, I sent him a note and told him that we were building running tracks out of this recycled tire rubber and all that. And so he called me and he said, I want to see that surface. And I said, why? He said, because we need a new playground surface on our McDonald's stores. I own 2 McDonald's. And I said, oh, that's right, I remember now. And so I did. I brought the little surface to him, the sample, showed it to him, and he said, can we use it for a playground? And I said, I guess we could make it thicker and softer, and we could try that. We've never done it. And I said, but what's wrong with the playground surfaces that you use now? He said, we have 3 surfaces we use now, and you're not old enough to remember it. You might have seen a couple. But he said, we used back then 3 surfaces. Number 1, bark chips. Bark chips. And I said, what's wrong with bark chips? He said, bark chips get wet when it rains, and when they get wet, they get dirty, and then the kids run out there, play on all the bark chips, their feet get dirty, their clothes get dirty, they track all the dirt into our stores, so our stores get dirty, then they go back out to their mother's car, get in the car, so the car gets dirty, they go into her house, and the house gets dirty. He said, bark chips are no good. He said, in fact, when it rains, we have to close the playgrounds for 2 days sometimes, so they dry out before we open them again. We lose all that business because no moms are bringing their kids to our store when our playground is closed. I said, so bark chips are no good. I understand. I said, well, what else do you have? He said, we use pea gravel. on some playgrounds, little tiny rocks, pea gravel. I said, well, what's wrong with pea gravel? That sounds good to me. Won't get dirty. He said, some little kids pick up the pea gravel and fling them at the other kids. And then he said, sometimes when they fling them, they miss, and they hit our great big picture window. He said, so pea gravel's no good. I said, okay, what else do you have? He said, sand. Some of our playgrounds have sand on them. I said, well, there you go. Not going to get dirty. You can't pick it up and throw it. I said, what's wrong with sand? He looked at me and he said, Chad, some little kids do the same thing in sand that cats do. So don't be playing in the sand playgrounds, you sickos back there. Don't do that. So anyway, so they need a new playground surface, so we did. And we actually built 3,000 playgrounds for McDonald's. So there you go. Before I get started, I want to apologize to everybody today. As I was coming in last night, I was thinking, God, here I go again. I'm going to a new city. I live outside of Atlanta, so I flew in last night and drove here. And I was thinking to myself how terrible it is what I do, my job, my career. I go places and I get there, and then all of you, it's horrible. I feel terrible. I'm sorry. You have to miss class to come here to do this. Huh? And I do that all over the place. I make kids miss class, miss school. I am so sorry. I apologize. Let me tell you why I'm really here, but other than to get you out of class. You're welcome. I spent 8 years traveling around this country taping my little show for ESPN, which I really enjoy. Anybody here familiar with ESPN? No? Yeah. How many households do you think you can see ESPN in? How many households? What do you think? Let me have a guess. 4? 4? That's a good guess. 95 million households. So 4 was almost right. So anyway, for 8 years, I traveled around, hosted the show on ESPN, which I love. We go on different trips every few weeks. We go on a total of 10 trips throughout the year. Each trip, 6 days. We would tape 2 shows. I hosted the show and I wrote the show, and so that was my part of it. And eventually it would go back to the production office and get edited, and you see it on ESPN. But my part was only the 60 days. The 10 trips, 6 days. 60 days, and I was done, which means I had the rest of the year off. Which sounds great to you, probably. But when you have the rest of the year off, that's 300 days plus off. You have to figure out what you're going to do. You can't just sit around. So I decided a long time ago I was going to travel during that time when I had a break, and I was going to speak to students like you. And I'll tell you why I did it. I grew up in a town in Louisiana. I went to a public school. Probably like some of your schools. And I got to that school when I was a freshman in high school, and I walked in the first day as a freshman. I went right up to one of the assistant principals, and I explained to him that this was my first day. I wasn't exactly sure what high school was all about, what was going to happen. And so I said to him, please help me, sir. I said, it's my first day. I'm a freshman. What's the deal here? And he looked at me and he said, I'll tell you the deal. He said, the deal is you are going to come to school, sit in class, do your homework, take your test. And I said, okay. I said, what do you do? He said, this school, before you leave, before you graduate, we're going to give you this plan, this map for success, so that when you get out of school and you finish your education after college, you'll be prepared to succeed. And I said, okay, fine. So I did it. I came to school, sat in class, did my homework, took my test, did all that stuff, everything they asked me to do. And then I finally got out in the real world and got a job, started a career, and about 2 weeks into it, I realized that guy lied to me. He never gave me any map for success. He never gave me any plan. He never taught me what it was going to take to succeed out in the real world. He taught me how to take tests, taught me how to get through school, to get ready for college, but he never taught me what he told me he was going to teach me, and he never prepared me. And quite frankly, it ticked me off. And so now I just travel around and I speak, but I only go places that believe we owe you some kind of plan for success. Because if we don't give you that, we cheat you. And that's not right, because you're doing all the work. So here's what I did. 15 years ago, our little business was sold. We built those playgrounds for McDonald's all over the world. 3,000 of them. Then some guy bought the whole business, and I didn't know what to do next, so I decided to take a little trip. I told my parents, I said, I'm going on a trip for 90 days. 90 days. Don't be looking for me. I'll be back in 90 days. And I did. I jumped in my old Ford Explorer, and I started driving around this country, and I drove, and I drove, and I drove for 90 days, 3 solid months. At the end of 3 months, I woke up one morning, I looked in the mirror, and I said to myself, I said, self, I really like this. This is good. This is really good. So I kept driving, and I kept driving, and I kept driving, and before you know it, I had been driving around this country for 2 solid years. I went to 40 different states, including this one, and every time I came into a new state, I kept running into people who were successful, people from all walks of life. And every time I met someone in a new town, I would ask them who the successful people were. And when I finally met the successful people, I didn't care if they were old people or young, male, female, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Native American. I didn't care. If they were successful, I went right to them and I said, I have a question for you. Can you please tell me, what does it take to succeed? What do young people need to know if they're going to be successful? I told them, I said, give me just 3 or 4 things. Just 3 or 4 things you have to have if you're going to be successful. I told them, I said, don't give me a great big long list. I can't stand lists. I said, I just want 3 or 4 things. Well, what I learned from those successful all around this country, very interesting. First thing I learned was this. This is a journey that every one of you is on. Same journey I used to be on. But I also learned, more important, that where you start the journey has absolutely nothing to do with where you finish. And I'll tell you what I mean, just to show you how stupid I was when I was a kid. I thought if you grew up in a small town like I did, you would struggle, you would have a tough time succeeding later in life. Not true. More successful people come from small towns than anywhere else in America. I also thought, though, that if you grew up and you didn't have a lot of money, if you didn't live in a great big house, your parents didn't have 3 or 4 cars, that you would have a tough time succeeding on this journey. That's not true either, because guess what? I grew up in a house, the whole house, the entire house cost $17,000. So don't let anybody tell you that where you start this journey has anything to do with where you finish. Where you start does not matter. When you start, that has a lot to do with where you finish, and that's why this is an important time in every one of your lives. So I asked all the successful people around the country to give me just 3 or 4 things that you have to have if you want to succeed, and here's what they said. Number 1 on the list, everybody had the same number 1. They told me, you want to be successful? Good. When you leave here today, when you walk through those doors, they said, start pursuing your dreams. Whatever they are, even if they're far-fetched. I'm sitting in a room today with a bunch of young people who have some far-fetched, way out, long-shot dreams. There are some people here who want to be actors, singers, writers, doctors, artists, professional athletes. They're all here. You know who you are. Those are far-fetched dreams. But those people around the country told me, even if the dream is far-fetched, you have to pursue it every single day. And I'll tell you why they told me that. Because if you have enough guts to walk through those doors and start pursuing some of your dreams, only 2 things are going to happen. Number 1, sometimes the dreams come true. Even the far-fetched ones. You check it out there. We have doctors and artists. We have singers. We have actors. We have writers. We have professional athletes. They come from all walks of life. They have to come from somewhere. Sometimes those dreams, they do come true. But they don't always come true, and that's why if you will pursue them every day, just a little something, but do it every single day, you're going to see along the way, as you pursue that dream, all of a sudden, other doors start to open up for you, and other opportunities are right there in front of you. But if you don't pursue the dreams, the doors don't open. The opportunities aren't there. If you let some adult talk you out of your dream because it's a little far-fetched, the doors won't open, the opportunity won't be there. So whatever your dream is, you have to pursue it every day. Dreams are a big deal for you starting now. Some young people tell me, they said, what's the big deal about dreams? I mean, come on, I'm in 9th grade, I'm in 10th grade. Your dreams today have a lot to do with where you end up at the end of this journey. Dreams are huge. In fact, speaking of dreams, far-fetched. I got a phone call from my sister-in-law yesterday. My sister-in-law grew up in South Georgia in a tiny little town. Tiny. In fact, the population of her town, the whole town, the entire place, 245 people, okay? There are 200 people in this room right now. The whole town, 245. And when my sister-in-law was in eighth grade, she told everybody she knew what her dream was. She told them, she said, I am going to play professional basketball. Well, you know like I know, that's a far-fetched dream. That's a far-fetched dream no matter where you live. But it's especially far-fetched when you're growing up in a tiny little town. And it's really far-fetched when you're growing up in a broken home and being raised by a single mom. But when you start running around telling everybody you're going to play professional basketball and you are 4'11", that is unbelievably far-fetched. But my sister-in-law, not getting talked out of her dream, she pursued it. She got into high school. She worked and practiced and tried. She got a little bit faster. She got a little bit taller, 2 inches. But she got a lot better. And when my sister-in-law finished her high school basketball career, she was a high school All-American basketball player, one of the best 5 basketball players in the United States, which is pretty amazing when you consider where she started. But that's not the end of the story, because then the University of Tennessee gave my sister-in-law a scholarship to play basketball at Tennessee. 4 years of free education and basketball at one of the best basketball colleges in America. They have won more national championships than any team in the past, and my sister-in-law went there. She played for Tennessee. She started all 4 years, and when she graduated from college, my sister-in-law from that tiny little town in South Georgia was an academic All-American basketball player, which means 2 things. She understood the importance of the sport, basketball she loved, but she also understood the importance of her academics and what she needed to do in school in order to do what she wanted to do later in life. So she finishes up as an academic All-American, which is extraordinary. It's amazing to me, but that's not the end of the story either. Because then the United States Olympic Committee called my sister-in-law and asked her to play on the United States Olympic basketball team, which she did. And it just so happens that my sister-in-law from that tiny little town in South Georgia came home from those Olympics with a gold medal wrapped around her neck. So don't think dreams don't come true. They do. But they don't come true if you don't pursue them. And they don't come true if you let some grown-up talk you out of your dream. Dreams are a big deal. Number 1 on everybody's list. Then all the people around the country told me, you want to be successful? Great. When you leave here today, be sure that you have great communication skills. They told me all of you should be able to walk out of those doors, talk to anybody, anywhere, about anything, anytime. In fact, they said you should be able to talk to your friends and your neighbors, your classmates. I saw you do that when you came in today. They said you should be able to talk to your friends' parents. Great, that's good. Everybody you play ball with, you're in clubs with, you're in the band with, sure, your teachers, yeah. Then they said something I couldn't believe. They looked at me and they said, you should be talking to strangers. That's what I said. What? I said, what are you talking about? I said, you grew up just like I did. Everybody told me, same thing they told you my whole life. Don't talk to strangers. Don't talk to strangers. Stranger danger. Oh my God. Good advice. I agree with that. I think don't talk to strangers. Great advice until you're about 10 years old. Then you do need to talk to people you don't know, because when you meet someone for the first time, you just never know. You never know who you might be meeting. I mean, there are people out there that you haven't met yet that might help you someday. You just never know. And I'll prove it to you. Now, I do think it's important to talk to strangers. I do not think that any of you should walk out of here down some alley talking to some of these strange strangers we have out there, right? But there are a lot of people that you haven't met yet that you do need to meet, because you just never know. And I'll prove it to you. I'll prove it to you right here today in this room. Look at the people sitting next to you. Look at these people, okay? How many of you think you're sitting next to someone right now who someday just might be President of the United States? You never know. You never know. Watch. I'll prove it. I'll prove that you just never know. Look back at those people around you. How many of you think you're sitting next to someone right now who someday just might be, who knows, one of America's 10 most wanted? Wait a minute. I'm just going to warn everybody here, everybody. If you've got any sense at all today, you stay away from this bunch right here. Don't get near them. I have to tell you, I've been a lot of places, but I think this might be the most crooks I've ever seen in one room. But you never know. And that's why, starting today, the more people you talk to, the more people you get to know, the more people you stay in touch with, the more successful you're going to be. And that's because people make people successful. You can go ask any adult you've ever met if they succeeded, if they got where they are today without ever getting any help from someone else, and the answer will be no every time. People make people successful, and that is why communication is critical for every one of you now. Absolutely, but we have a problem. We have a big problem. It's not just here, it's all over the country. I have spoken to 900,000 students all over the country. Same problem everywhere. We have this great, big, fat communication gap between your generation and mine. We don't talk to each other. I saw it today. I got on the elevator at the hotel. 2 kids walk in the elevator. Nobody's talking. You know what they did? They walked in, both of them. The doors closed. The elevator started to go up. They both looked down, counted their feet. When they got to 2, they started over. What's up with that? You just never know who might be in that elevator. There could be someone in that elevator that gives you a job someday. You just never know. People make people successful. Communication is critical. I don't understand why we have the communication gap. Once you get to be about 11 years old, everybody shuts up. I mean, come on. When you were little tiny kids, there was no communication gap. Little tiny kids, they'll talk to anybody forever. Right? You might have a little brother or sister like that. I had a nephew when he was 3 years old. 3. He came walking in the room one day. His first name is Foster. It's my sister's son. 3 years old. He walked in the room. I looked at him. I said, Foster, do a favor for me. He said, yes, sir. I said, go ahead and put your shoes on. Immediately he looked at me. He said, why do I have to put my shoes on? I said, because we're going to the store. He said, why are we going to the store? I said, well, because we need to get some food. He said, why do we need food? I said, because we have to eat. He said, why do we have to eat? I said, because, and he said, don't you ask again. But now you think about it. That's a 3-year-old kid having a conversation with an adult. Every time that little munchkin asks a question, he learns something. Every time you ask, you'll learn. The more you ask, the more you learn, the more people you meet, the more successful you are, because people make people successful. And you can start that right now. You have plenty of time to do it. So when you were little tiny kids, no communication gap. But then something happened to you. You guys got a little bit older, still no communication gap. I was in Montana 4 years ago taping a show for ESPN. This kid came walking by me on the sidewalk, little tiny guy walking right by, all by himself. So I looked down at him and I said, hey, where are you going today? That kid looked up at me. He said, I'm going to the movies. I said, by yourself? He said, yes, sir. I said, how old are you, kid? He said, I am 5. I said, wait a minute. Hold on. I said, you're going to the movies by yourself? He said, yes, sir. I said, and you're 5? He said, that's right. I said, when will you be 6? He said, after I'm 5. No communication gap there. But what happens? You get to be about 11, everybody shuts up. You have to talk to people. You have to talk to strangers. You have to stay in touch. People make people successful. How hard is it for you to stay in touch? Oh my goodness gracious. Networking skills. The ability to meet someone, get to know them, stay in touch. When I was your age, if I met somebody and I wanted to stay in touch, you know what I had to do? I had to go buy an envelope, a piece of paper. I had to write something with my hand. Can you believe that? And a pencil. Write it on there, fold it up, stick it in the envelope, lick the envelope, close it up, buy a stamp, stick the stamp on there after I lick the stamp, then go all the way to the mailbox, stick it in the mailbox, and hope it got where it was going 4 days later. That's what I had to do. That's what I did. You know what you have to do? Boom, 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 I'm done. So, you know what that tells me? That tells me two things. Number one, you already know how to network. You're the masters. You're the best networkers in the world. You don't have to buy stationery and stamps and letters and lick and write and all that stuff. You know how to network, so you're going to have networking skills down pat before you start. You already know how to do it. All we have to do is help you learn how to do it professionally as well as socially. So networking skills are pretty important. Then all the successful people around told me around the country, they said, you know, really, one of the most important things you have to have if you want to succeed, no matter what your job, no matter what your career, no matter when you go to work, they told me you have to have great, not good, great people skills. And I looked at them, I said, what are you talking about, people skills? I'm a people, what are you talking about? They said people skills, the ability to get along with people. And I said, oh, okay. Then somebody asked me, can you think of an example of people skills? And I said, oh yeah. When I was building the playgrounds for McDonald's, I told you, we built 3,000 of those things. McDonald's has something every year, once a year, 1 day a year, in honor of the founder of McDonald's, who is, it is not Ronald McDonald. Hello? In what class did you learn that? In honor of Ray Kroc, the founder of McDonald's, McDonald's has something they call Founders Day. And on Founders Day, none of the big wigs, the big shots, the high executives for McDonald's, none of them go to work. None of them go to their office. They all go to a McDonald's store somewhere in their area, and they go to work in the store. They get the apron and the funny little hat, no name tag. The CEO of McDonald's could have made your Big Mac one day. And they work in the store. 1 day a year, Founders Day. Well, since I supplied the playground surfaces, I got to work Founders Day. And I did it several times, but the last time I did it, I came in at 6:30 in the morning. I got my apron and my funny little hat, and then they assigned this 19-year-old full-time McDonald's employee to train me. And a fine job he did. That guy, he taught me how to make the burgers and the fries and the biscuits and the salads, the Egg McMuffins. He let me work the drive-thru, which I totally screwed up, but that's okay. And then he said, it's your turn to work the front counter. And I said, perfect, because that's what I really want to do. And so I walked up to the front counter, and I got there, and I realized I was by myself, and all of a sudden, here comes my 19-year-old buddy, the McDonald's employee, and he says, I'm here to train you. I said, good. And so I said, I know how to make the burgers, the fries, the biscuits, the salads, the Egg McMuffins. I can screw up the drive-thru. I think I'm ready. He said, you're not ready. I said, sure, I'm ready. What do you mean? He said, you're not ready. I said, how can I not be ready? I can do all that stuff. He said, you don't know how to work the cash register. And I said, okay. And he said, well, I'll show you. So he walked up, and he taught me how to greet the customers. He taught me how to work, take their order and all that. And I said, great. I said, now I'm ready. He said, now you're ready. I said, okay, great. And he said, goodbye. And he left. And so I got up there, and he came back, and he said, I forgot to tell you one thing. And I said, what's that? He said, you need to learn how to open up the cash register. I said, okay. So he started punching the buttons on the cash register, and all of a sudden, the drawer popped open. As soon as the drawer opened up, the assistant manager from that store came running across the floor, grabbed that kid by the back of the collar, got up in his face, and she said, what are you doing? And that poor 19-year-old looked at her, and he said, I'm just showing the man how to work the cash register. And the assistant manager got right back in his face and she said, "That's where the money is?" And I heard all of that. So I very politely walked around the 19-year-old. I went over to the assistant manager. I put my hand on her shoulder and I said, "Ma'am, with all due respect, I have built 3,000 playgrounds for McDonald's. Lady, I already got your money, okay?" So she left. Now it's just me with the 19-year-old. That guy leaves. Now I'm by myself. So I look up. The door opens, and in comes my first customer. This lady comes walking in. She is dressed up like you can't believe. She has on like $5,000 worth of makeup, right? So she's coming in. She gets to the front counter, and I'm there, and I'm totally trained now. I mean, I am ready. And I looked at her, and I said, "Welcome to McDonald's. May I take your order, please?" That lady looked at me and she said, "Iced tea." So I looked at her and I said, "Yes, ma'am." I said, "Would you like some lemon with that tea?" She said, "Just iced tea." So I got a glass, I got a cup, put the ice in the cup, filled the cup with tea, put the lid on the cup. I put the cup on the counter. I started punching the buttons on that cash register. That lady picked up the cup of tea, took off the lid, took one sip, put the cup back down on the counter, looked at me and said, "Refill." So I looked at her and I said, "Yes, ma'am." I said, "Would you like some lemon with that refill?" She said, "Just refill it." So I picked up the cup of tea and I leaned over and I poured the entire cup of tea right on her head. Not really, but that's what I wanted to do. Now, you think about it. How many of you work part-time in the summers ever? Who has worked part-time in this room? Raise your hand. Raise it high, because let me tell you, that's a good thing. You have worked part-time. And I'll tell you why it's a good thing. I'll tell you why working part-time is a good thing. If you haven't done it already, please do it. If you don't think you're going to do it, change your mind. Working part-time is critical. The number one common denominator among successful people across this country, the number one common denominator is not straight A's in school. There's nothing wrong with straight A's. It's a great thing. Don't you walk out of here and say I said something else. Number one common denominator of successful people around this country is not high SAT scores. It's not. Don't you say I didn't say it was important. It is important. But the number one common denominator among successful people everywhere, the number one common denominator is they worked part-time as teenagers. And the reason for that is because during their experience working part-time, they got a chance to meet the iced tea idiots of the world. And they had an opportunity to learn how to deal with the iced tea jerks around them. And if you can learn that as a teenager now, while you're working part-time, you will be much better prepared when you get out there and get your full-time job, because when you do get your full-time job and choose your career, the iced tea idiots of the world don't go away. They're everywhere. They multiply. So you'll have to deal with them. And if you don't believe me, go home tonight and ask your parents if they have ever had to work with a jerk. And they will all say yes. So, people skills now are very important. Then everyone around the country told me, they said, "Chad, one more thing everybody has to have if you're going to succeed. Just one more." I'm going to go ahead and tell you what they said, because when I was in school, I didn't get it. Now I do. They said it, and they're right. Nobody in this room, nobody will succeed without knowledge. Knowledge is essential. Knowledge is critical. The more knowledge you have, the more interesting you are, the more valuable you will be to any company you go to work for out there. Knowledge is absolutely necessary. And that's why your whole life, everybody's been telling you, go to school, get an education. Don't quit, stay in school, don't drop out. Get a degree, stay in school, don't drop out. Stay in school, get a degree, don't quit. Say, oh my gosh. Good advice. I support that. I hope everybody in this room stays in school. I hope every single one of you graduates from high school. I hope every single one of you goes on to some kind of post-secondary education, technical school, community college, four-year college, whatever it might be. I hope you all do that. But look, I didn't come all the way from Atlanta to tell you a big fat lie. I hope everybody graduates. But the bottom line is simple. That night, graduation night, which is a big deal, as you know, everybody gets excited, everybody shows up, aunts, uncles, cousins, brothers, grandparents, parents, they all come to watch. And then, if you're a graduate, you're all dressed up in the gown, you got your hat, and all of a sudden they call your name, and you get to walk up on stage, and you walk across the stage, they hand you a diploma, you take it home, you frame it like most people, and you hang it on the wall, which is great. But just remember, that is nothing but a piece of paper. And nobody in the real world is going to trade you success for a piece of paper. It's not the piece of paper that makes you valuable. It's not. It's the knowledge that you get as you earn the piece of paper that makes you valuable. And it's the knowledge that you get in class every day, even the classes that you don't like. That's the knowledge that the business community is going to reward. And that's why, as long as all of you are going to come to school, sit in class, do your homework, take your tests, you have to make the best grades you possibly can make. You have to make the best grades every time, and don't let anybody ever ask you to do better than your best, because your best is going to be good enough. It's good enough today, next week, next year, your best is good enough. Now, that means if you're capable of making straight A's, that's what you should make. If the best you can do is all B's and a C, that's fine. If that's your absolute best, because your best is good enough every single time. And I always believed that. I always thought that was true. But then something happened to me several years ago I will never forget. As you know, I live in Atlanta. Well, we hosted the Summer Olympics in Atlanta several years ago. And I had never been to the Olympics, but I wanted to go, so I went down to Olympic Stadium one night to watch some track and field. The night I was there, they were running the finals of the 5,000-meter race for the gold medal for women. So I walked into Olympic Stadium with 85,000 other people, and I sat down. These 7 girls came up to the starting line. Bam! The gun went off. They started running around that track. You might know this already, but in the 5,000-meter race, you have to run around that track 12 times. So they started to run, and they ran, and they ran, and they ran, and they ran. And finally got to lap 6, halfway through the race. At that point, 6 of the 7 girls were running together right next to each other, all bunched up. But one girl, she was starting to fall behind. In fact, she was almost a half a lap behind everybody else. Well, they kept on running. They came around to lap 9 with 3 laps to go in the race. Those 6 girls were still bunched up next to each other, but that one girl, now, she was a whole lap behind everybody else, and they kept on running the race, and they came to lap 11 with 1 lap to go in the finals of the Olympics for the gold medal, and those 6 girls were bunched up together, but all of a sudden, the girl from China broke out. Looked like she might win the gold medal. But that one girl, now, she was 2 laps behind everybody else. They came around that final lap. The girl from China crossed the finish line first. The other girls crossed the finish line right behind her. They all ran off the track, into the locker room, gone, out of sight. You couldn't see them. But there was still one girl running around that track all by herself. At that moment, at that very moment, 80,000 people stood up in Olympic Stadium and started screaming and yelling and clapping and going nuts while that one girl ran around the track all by herself. Now, those 80,000 people, they didn't stand up and scream and yell because that girl was going to win a gold medal, because she wasn't. And those 80,000 people didn't jump to their feet and scream and stomp and go berserk because that girl was going to win any kind of race. Because, as you know, she was going to finish dead last. The only reason 80,000 people, can you imagine, 80,000 people stood up and screamed and yelled and went crazy, the only reason they did that is because that girl who was still running around the track was running the best time that she had ever run in her life. So whatever your best is and yours, it's good enough. Don't ever let some adult ask you to do better than your best. Your best is good enough. This is your journey. As you head down the road on this journey, get ready. Because before any of you reach the end, achieve your dreams, accomplish your goals, succeed, before any of you get there, every one of you will have to deal with the same thing. And that is failure. Failure is part of the deal. It's part of the trip. I have failed at more things than you can count. Failure is just part of the journey. It's like bad days. Everybody has bad days. You have bad days. I have bad days. It's like obstacles. I have obstacles in my life. You have obstacles in your life. They may not be the same, but we all have obstacles. The difference is, I believe that obstacles are in my life to make me stronger. Some people believe that obstacles are in their lives to beat them, to defeat them. But that's not true. They're there to make you stronger. In fact, I have a friend who lives in Colorado. My friend Eric Weinmeier knows more about obstacles than anybody I've ever met in my life. My friend Eric, when he was a high school freshman, he used to do every single extreme sport you can think of. He did them all. But as he moved through high school, he started to focus on just one sport, and that is mountain climbing. And now, that's all he does. Climbs mountains, climbs mountains, climbs mountains, all over the place. Well, my friend Eric came to Atlanta 2 years ago to give a slide presentation and a speech on an expedition he had just completed where he and 9 fellow climbers, 10 of them, had climbed all the way to the top of a mountain that you will be familiar with. My friend Eric and his 9 fellow climbers climbed all the way to the top of Mount Everest, which, as you know, is the tallest mountain in the world at 29,029 feet. And they made it all the way to the top. Along the way, faced every obstacle you can think of. Hurricane force winds, sub-zero temperature, lack of oxygen, and they still made it all the way to the top. Just an amazing accomplishment. In fact, I was telling this story the other day about my friend Eric in an auditorium with 2,000 students in it. And I got to this point, and all of a sudden, a student stood up in the back row of the auditorium. He didn't raise his hand. He just stood up, and he looked over at me, and he screams out. He says, "Hey!" And so I stopped, and I looked at him, and I said, "Yes?" He said, "Your friend Eric climbed Mount Everest." And I said, "I just got finished telling you that." And he said, "That's no big deal." And I said, wait a minute, hold on. 29,029 feet. I said, you know how high that is? I said, you go outside on a clear day like today, look up in the sky, you see an airplane up there so small you can barely see that sucker. That's about 30,000 feet. And Mount Everest is 29,029 feet. And that student looked back over at me one more time and he said, "Yeah, but he's not the only one who's ever done it, right?" And I said, wait. Most people who try to climb Mount Everest, most people, they don't even get halfway before they quit and come home. 300 people have died trying to climb Mount Everest. And that student looked at me one last time and he said, "Yeah, I understand all that, but he's not the only one who's ever done it, so it's no big deal." And I looked at him and I said, "You know what? You are right. My friend Eric, he's not the only one who's ever climbed to the top of Mount Everest. He's not. It's just that my friend Eric Weinmeier is the only person in the entire world who has ever climbed to the top of Mount Everest who happens to be 100% totally blind, as in no can see." So that kid sat down and shut up. So next time you're thinking about the obstacles in your life, they're in your life to make you stronger. Same reason they're in mine. And as you head down the road on this journey, you're getting closer to the end. You can see success. Before you get there, it's important to understand the real definition of success. And if you ask me, definition of success is about 4 things. See, I've seen it from both sides of the fence. I grew up in a house. Remember that house? The whole house? $17,000. Today, I got a couple dollars in the bank. I'll admit that. But it only means I've seen it from both sides, and I can tell you my definition of success is about 4 things. When all 200 of you finally get down to the end of your journey, when you get there, if you have good friends, you know how hard they are to find. If you have a good reputation, you can start over today. If you like what you do for a living, you enjoy your career. And last but not least, if you give back to your community and you help others, then you are successful. That is what success is all about. Success has nothing to do with money. Money cannot, does not, will not, has not ever made anyone happy. In fact, I have more miserable, rich friends than you can count. Now, don't misunderstand me. There's nothing wrong with money. I like money. But money can't make you happy. In fact, I have 2 friends who literally kill themselves chasing that dollar. One of them stuck a gun in his mouth, blew his head right off his shoulders because he could never make enough money. So when you start thinking about your future, and today's a good day, think about the things you're naturally good at. Everybody in this room has natural talents. Think about the things you enjoy doing. What are your interests? And last but not least, before you choose a career, be sure you check it out. Check out all your options. Choose something that you have tried. If you do that, you understand the definition of success, your chances are huge. But before I finish this part of the session, I want you to know it is much more important for every one of you to be happy than it is to be rich. So good luck to you. And before we take a little short break, I want to tell you something. I have spoken to 900,000 students all over the country. When you bring students into a room from different schools, different age levels, it is almost impossible to think that they would sit down, be quiet, behave, be respectful, and pay attention. You have done a phenomenal job of that today, and I want to thank you for that. Give yourselves a round of applause. Thank you for that very much. So you know the plan. In 2 minutes, we're going to take a break so you can go to the men's room or the ladies' room if you need to. If you don't need to, hang out where you are. When we get back, I am going to sign some books for you. So if you want to pick out one book that you have, I'll be up at this table and we'll take a few minutes to sign, and then we will start the next part of our session. So I'm looking at the clock in the back. It's almost 10 after 10, so at 10:15, we will regroup and get started. Thank you again. God bless you. I'll see you in 7 minutes. Hey, everybody wrap it up. Close your books. Whether you're finished or not, please close your books. All right. How many, no big deal, no grades, nothing. How many people did not finish? Raise your hand. Okay. All right. Now, at this point, I want to hear 3 or 4 different strategies that were used to try to accomplish this task. I talked to you guys, so will you stand up, do you mind? And tell me what you, in fact, come up here. All right. One of the other critical skills that all of you are going to have is the ability to stand up in front of a group and speak and make a presentation. Doesn't matter what your job is, at some point, it might be a small group, but it will happen. So, a job interview, hello. Okay, so, what is your name?
Zach Sinclair.
Zach, I would like to know, you finished, right? What strategy you used?
Instead of dividing the book up, we divided the questions so that way we didn't have to read the whole book. Everybody.
All right, so each person took 4 or 5 questions.
Yeah, I was the scribe, so I wrote everything down, and then everybody took 4 questions, and then I wrote them down.
And then they just scrambled through the whole book to try to find the answers to their questions, and then gave them to you. And it worked. Well, we don't know if you flunked the test yet or not, but I mean, you got answers. All right, okay, thank you. Give them a round of applause. Okay, so one strategy was to divide the questions, put a scribe, that was your full-time job, okay? Divide the questions and have each person skim the book as fast as they could to come up with the answers to your 5 or 4 questions or what it was. All right, okay, that's one option. Who did something different? Who had a different approach? You had a different approach? Come on up here real quick. Thank you for that applause. Oh, she's injured and she's still coming up here. Look at that. All right, tell me your name.
Deja Mitchell.
Deja, coming up here, what strategy did your team use?
Well, we split the questions in half, and half of us started from question 20, and half of us started from the beginning, and we kind of met in the middle.
And who read what?
Well, we found out that like the last bit of questions started in the back of the book, so we kind of just met. Like the people who started from the last questions went to the back of the book and flipped forward.
How many of you figured out that the questions went in line with the book? Early questions or early part of the book? Okay. All right, good. And you finished? Okay. What grade are you in? 10th. Did you have anybody at your table that was younger than you? Yeah. Do we have any 8th graders here? Raise your hand. Okay. Okay, good. Thank you. Give her a round of applause. Did anyone implement a different strategy? Okay. Did anyone simply split up the book? 10 pages for you, 10 pages for you, 10 pages. Did anybody do that? Okay. All right, I have a couple of questions. I mixed you up because I wanted to see interaction and collaboration with people you did not know. Did anyone at any table meet someone they did not know and learn something about anything about someone new? Raise your hand. Fantastic. Last question before we grade the test. Last question. 8th graders. Are there any 7th graders here? There are? Okay, 7th and 8th graders, please stand up right where you are. 7th and 8th graders. All right, now stay up. Now, here's the question. Here's the question. You 7th and 8th graders had to sit at a table with some high school students and some older people, and so I want to know if any 7th or 8th grader in this room ended up at a table and had to work with a jerk. Raise your hand. This guy says, you know better. Okay, sit down. Good. I'm glad you worked together. All right, here we go with the answers to the question. Be sure you have one sheet that has all answers, or be prepared to go through. Are you ready? Number 20. The answer is, or similar to, Chad would further his education. He would become a computer whiz. He would learn a second language, build a larger vocabulary, have more balance in life, read more, learn to sell, work on his public speaking skills. Make a note whether you got that one right or wrong. You only need 4 of them. All right? Number 19. Billy Purdom is the brother of one of Chad's friends. He's a professional juggler, works on a cruise ship. The message behind the story, never give up on your dreams because they can come true. Get it? Did you get it? Number 18. Dr. Martin Luther King's dream was that black and white people would learn to live and work together in peace. Number 17. The answers to the question on number 17 will vary. The question was, list 2 non-traditional jobs that interest you. I'd like you to raise your hand and give me a few examples of non-traditional jobs. Yes, ma'am? A food stylist, excellent. Yes, sir. Hold on. Food critic. Movie critic, yes, sir. Can't hear you. A wedding photographer, yes, good one. Yes, in the back. Professional dresser. Professional. I can't hear. Good. Sir, a what? A mime. Good one, a mime. And yeah, one more. A lottery winner. There you go. All right, number 16, please. Your ultimate goal when choosing a career is to choose a career that you will enjoy and a job that you will be good at. Did you get it? All right. Number 15. No, yes, 15. Definition of the word aptitude. Natural talents and special abilities for doing or learning to do certain kinds of things easily and quickly. Number 14. What are the 3 right answers to consider when choosing a career? Number 1. Choosing a career because I have natural talents to do the job. I'm choosing a career that I have tried, and I'm choosing a career that will allow me to pay my bills, save money, and still maintain the quality of life I need. Number 13, how long will the average career last? Who knows the answer to that one? What is it? 86,000 hours. Number 12, 4 ways to get money. So, assuming there's no money tree in your backyard. What are they? Earn it, inherit it, marry it, steal it. Let's talk about that. Number 1. Number 1. Marrying money is unlikely. Inheriting money can take forever. Stealing is illegal. You need to earn your money. Number 11. 5 good questions to ask when you meet someone for the first time. Where are you from? How long have you lived there? Where do you work? Do you like your job? What are your hobbies? Okay? Number 10. Why is it important to read the newspaper? That's where a valuable source of current information is. Number 9. 2 contacts that Chad made while a teenager. Who can name 2 contacts that I made? Raise your hand. Yes, sir. David Brantley. Yes, ma'am. Mr. X. What is Mr. X's real name? Bonus question for $100. What is Mr. X's first name? Real name. First person who knows the answer, stand up. Mr. X's real name. President Bush. That is wrong. Last chance, Mr. X. Hold on, we may have a winner. Yes, ma'am. Who? No. Yes, ma'am. Who? It's correct that it's not important. It could be anybody, but that's not his real name. He's a real person. Last chance. Yes. Nope. Yes, last one. Who is Mr. X? What's his real name? Who? No. No, sorry. It's Ronald McDonald. Not really, just kidding. Okay. Number 8. Who is David Brantley? He was a contact that I worked with for 13 years to build the company, installing the playgrounds, surfaces, running tracks. He impacted my life by giving me a start in the business world. Number 7. What is the difference between a contact and a connection? Contact is someone, what is that? Contacts are the acquaintances made as you travel through life. They become advisors, mentors, and friends. Connections are people you meet, use, and may never speak to again. Not good. Number 6. What is your passion? The answers will vary. Be thinking about that. You want to connect your passion to your career. Critically important. Number 5. 5. Definition of passion. An affection you develop for something you're introduced to. Could be sports, could be music, could be art. Okay? What sport did Chad learn at camp? Tennis. How it impacted his life? Helped him make contacts. What's the definition of personal success? Good friends, good family, liking your job and making a contribution to the community. 2 corporations, number 2, that use the Safe Deck product. Who knows? What? McDonald's and Disney. Finally, what material is used for the product that Chad developed? Recycled tires. Very good. How many of you, raise your hand one more time, did not finish? Okay. No big deal, except this is a perfect example of managing what? Time. Yeah. Figuring out what resources you have, coming up with a strategy, solving problems, think critically, and manage your time. Okay? Great. All right. Everybody pull out the green book. Could I get 4 more volunteers? Everybody gets one. All right. Just so you know. Okay, everybody up. Listen. I am handing out to you now what is called the pre-assessment for financial literacy. You do not get a grade on this. The purpose of this Hey, what happened to my silent crowd 20 minutes ago? That worked great in third grade, didn't it? Okay, let me have your attention. Shh. Everybody up. Thank you. This is the pre-assessment. You will not get a grade on it. I'm going to ask you in just a second to take this quick quiz to establish where we are in financial literacy. Need one? Yeah, we need one more test up front. And then we will talk about it a little bit and see how everybody did later in the day, okay? So, who does not have a test? Raise your hand. Okay, volunteers, you see our people? Raise your hand if you need a test. Raise your hand if you need a quiz. Volunteers, if you're out, we have another stack up here. Thank you very much. All right, this test is not a teamwork test. This one you must do on your own. We're going to start in 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Raise your hand if you need a quiz. Raise it high. Volunteers, split up that stack if you would. Split up the stack. Split it up. Raise your hand high. We have them up here now. 4, 3, 2, 1. Go. Start. Hey, everybody stop right now. Everybody stop. If you are at a table with more than 4 people, how many people don't have quizzes? Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, I need you guys to team up, a couple of you. All right. No, you've already started. Okay, team up. Can you guys work together? You've already started. Who needs a test? Raise your hand. Are you guys set? All right, how many do you need here? Okay, work together and work together. Okay, we're out. We got a big number. All right, we got one more here. It goes back here. Okay, go ahead and get started fast as you can. Finish the financial literacy pre-assessment, please. Do not get help from your neighbor unless you're working on a team combo test. Thank you. Guys, you have about 7 minutes to do it. 8 minutes. Time management, 8 minutes. 2 minutes, 2 minutes. One minute. 1 minute. Thirty seconds. All right, everybody, shut it down. Pencils down. Are we ready? So, does anyone have a blank test? Nobody? You do? Great. All right, number one, an average career. Hey, before we start, if I could get you guys to be as quiet as you can so everybody can hear the answers, we'll move quickly. Number one, an average career will last approximately how many hours of your work life in 40 years? I'm going to ask you to just call out your numbers. What do you think? A. 86,000 hours. Number two, FICA is deducted from your paycheck before you get it. Stands for? Correct answer is A. Federal Insurance Contribution Act. Number three, health insurance program funded by some of your taxes and run by the feds is known as? D. Medicare. Four, the average Social Security payment. The average Social Security payment a person currently receives per month is? Raise your hand if you think it's A. Hi. Raise your hand if you think it's B. How many think it's C? D. Correct answer is B, like boy. Is there anyone in this room, anybody here today, who thought that when it came time to retire, that they could live off of Social Security? Now you know. 5, Walmart, successful corporation started by? Answer is C, Sam Walton. Good thing I didn't give you Ronald McDonald as a choice, huh? Number 6. Teenagers in America spend approximately blank dollars every year. The correct answer is C, 175 billion. Number 7. How long will it take to pay off $1,000 in credit card debt? If your interest rate's 18%, you only make the minimum payment. Correct answer is C, 20 years. Number 8, the money you make at your job day after day, week after week is called? D, not enough? All the teachers wrote D. That's good. The answer is B like boy, earned income. 9, how long does it take most lottery winners to go broke? Correct answer is C, 5 years. Number 10, what percentage of bankruptcies are filed as a result of medical bills? Correct answer is A, 40%. 40. 11, when items such as a house or land become more valuable, this is called? The answer is B like boy, appreciation. Number 12, which items below would depreciate if you own them? Correct answer is D like David, all of the above. 13. What is a good resource to consult when buying a new or used car? Correct answer is D, like dog. Kelly Blue Book. 14. If you borrow $20,000 for 5 years at 12% to purchase a car, how much will you actually pay for that car? Correct answer is B like boy, $26,700. Number 15. If your car is worth less than you owe on your car loan at any time during the life of the loan, you're said to be. Answer is B, upside down on your loan. 16, what percentage of millionaires choose to buy used cars rather than new cars? The answer is D, 40%. Very good. 17, FTC stands for? Answer is D, Federal Trade Commission. 18, if you think someone's trying to scam you on the internet, you should contact the? Answer is C, FTC. 19, developing a financial lifestyle that fits the amount of money you will earn in your career is called? The correct answer is B. Let me explain that one to you real quick. Everybody look up here. The correct answer is a journey-driven lifestyle. Don't go out and decide what you want your lifestyle to be first. Don't walk out and decide how many houses, how many cars, how many airplanes, how many boats, how many vacation homes you want. And then have to choose a career to pay for your lifestyle. It's a guaranteed recipe for disaster. Instead, choose your career based on the things you enjoy and your aptitudes and interests and things you've tried. Then you know how much money that career will pay. Then develop a lifestyle around that much money. A journey-driven lifestyle. Last question. If you miss this, you're in trouble. Common denominator of financially successful people. Answer is D, worked part-time. All right, I want you to look at your test and count the number of wrong answers. Wrong answers. Okay, now, looking at your test that you have graded, how many people in this room, it's no big deal, how many people in this room missed more than 5? Raise your hand. Put your hand down. How many people missed more than 8? Raise your hand. Put your hand down. Thank you. How many missed more than 10? Okay. Did anybody get everyone right? You guys got them all right? Before we graded them or after? Okay. All right, put everything away. We're going to get started on one more little activity here. All righty, everybody down. Have a seat. Thank you. All right, final topic of the day is financial literacy. I asked you to take the test so you could see where you stood before you start looking into that more, reading books, doing curriculum, etc. The national average, just so you know, nationally 44% of students pass the test. 56 fail it. So you know, no big deal. But that is what we're going to do now, talk a little bit about financial literacy, might answer some of those questions for you. You have already helped me greatly by explaining to me the 4 ways you get money. You make money, you go earn it. All right, go to your job, earn your money. You marry it, you inherit it, or you steal it, right? And we have concluded marrying is unlikely, inheriting takes forever, stealing is illegal. So the question is, you're going to earn your money. The next question is, how will you earn your money? When you start thinking about the 86,000 hours that it takes to finish your career and earn your money, it's critically important that you all think about how you will spend those 86,000 hours. Will you be doing something you love? Will you be doing something that matches your aptitudes? Will you be doing something you tried? If you don't think about those things, you will be choosing jobs for the wrong reasons. And I'll give you a perfect example. How many times have you heard someone say, when I grow up, I want to be a vet? And every time someone says that to me, every time a young person says that to me, I immediately look at them and I say, why do you want to be a vet? And then they almost always look back at me and say, I want to be a vet because I love animals. And I look back at them and I say, that's a horrible reason to become a vet. Now, if you are going to be a vet for all the right reasons, matches my aptitudes and my passion and my talents, and I'm interested and I tried it, if you're going to do that, then it's really important to love animals as a vet. But you don't choose to become a vet simply because you love animals. And I'll give you an example. My father-in-law was a vet. He told me 4 years ago, a 17-year-old walked into his office, came right up to him and said, Dr. Bush, I want to be a vet. And my father-in-law looked at him and said, oh, why do you want to be a vet, son? And he said, because I love animals. And my father-in-law said, come here. And he took the kid into the back. In the operating room, there was a dog up on the operating table that had just been hit by a car. That dog was cut in half. Guts were spilling out all over the table. And he looked at the dog. He looked at the dog, then he looked at the kid. And he said, that's an animal. He said, you still love animals? I said, what'd he say? What'd he say? He said he didn't say anything. He threw up and he left. But that moment, that young man decided he did not want to be a vet. So you need to be sure you think about all the right reasons for choosing a job before you make the 86,000 hour decision. So that's come under the category of how you will make your money, number one. Number two, how will you manage your money once you start to earn it? How much money are we talking about? The average person in this room, should you finish high school, go to college, complete college, the average person in this room over the course of your life will earn $2.5 million. The average. Some will earn more. So how will you manage it? And under managing, I always think of 3 categories. Most people have a list to manage money. This is what the list says. 3 things on the list. Number 1, I get my money. Top of the list, number 1, spend. Spend. And if there's anything left after I'm finished spending, I might save. I might save. And if perchance after I spend and I save, if there was ever anything left, maybe perhaps by chance, I might thinking about giving away some money. All right, here's the problem with the list. If you spend first, there's rarely anything left for saving. If you save next, there's rarely anything left to give. I suggest you switch the list. Same lines, but flip it. Number 1 on the top of the list, give away some money. I know, it's hard to think about. Imagine as a teenager, I know. I've been there, I understand it. But if you aren't giving some money away now, you won't be giving away money later. And giving is a critical part of success for all of you. And I'll give you a perfect example. Last February, I was in Midland, Texas, speaking to 3,000 10th graders in a civic center. I spoke to all of them, and this is what I told them. We got on this subject, and I said, look, you got to give away money. I don't care how much. That's your business, not mine. But you have to make a habit of giving money away. So I looked at them, and I said, all right, I'll tell you what, there are 3,000 of you here. I said, I don't care who you are, where you live, what you have, what you don't have. I said, if you give me 10 minutes, 10, I will walk out of here through those doors, and I will find somebody who has less and who needs help. And so I finished my speech with those kids. 3,000 students stood up in the Civic Center and started to file out the aisles. And I looked up and I realized, man, I'm never getting out of here. I will never get out of there to the lobby. I'll never get to my flight. I'll miss my flight. Horrible day. And then I realized there's a curtain behind here on the stage, and I bet there's a door behind the curtain that goes right to the lobby. I'll go through that door, and I'll be in the lobby. I'll get to the car, and I'll be fine. And so I did. And remember, I'm in Midland, Texas. It's February. It is 27 degrees outside. So instead of fighting the crowd, because I never make it, I go behind the curtain. I find the door. I open up the door. The door goes 12 inches, and bam, it stops. And I realized I was wrong. That door did not go out to the lobby. That door actually went to the outside. It was a concrete landing. It was covered, but it was concrete. It was 27 degrees outside. I opened the door. It went just 1 foot, and bam, it stopped. So I looked down to see why the door had stopped, and I realized I had just slammed that door right into the back of a homeless guy who was trying to sleep on that landing. 27 degrees. And it occurred to me right then and there, I just told all those students to give me 10 minutes. I'd go out there and find someone who had less. Took me 3 minutes. So those people are out there. Giving is important. I know it's hard to think about as a young person, but it's a critical ingredient in the formula for success. So we give first. Give first. How much? Your opinion. My business? No. How much we give? All right, we give. Number 2, then we save. We save second. Saving has to become a habit, and I'll tell you why. Saving is just like smoking cigarettes. People who smoke cigarettes get in the habit of smoking cigarettes, and they can't what? Can't stop. Can't break the habit. Bad habit. Bad habit. But likewise, if you develop a good habit, it will be hard to break as well. So if you start saving early, you'll be saving later, and that's the key. Saving does not work if you wait till you're 30 years old. It's still good. It's still good. But it doesn't work because saving is all about time. Perfect example, I wrote a story in the Green Book about this girl, and you'll read it. Her name is Doodles. That's not her real name. But they called her Doodles, and I'll tell you why. She worked in a little diner for her junior year of high school, first year. After school, on Saturdays in the summer, Doodles worked in the diner. And she was a waitress, and she did a good job, and she was really well respected. But every Friday, when Doodles got her check from Jesse, the owner of the diner, Doodles would take the check, put it in her pocket. She'd start to walk out of the diner, but right before she left the diner, she would stop at the last table and pull a paper napkin off the table and then write something, doodle something on that piece of paper, stick that paper in her pocket, walk out the diner, go across the street to the bank. She did it every Friday. Doodles worked there all through high school. When she went to college, she came back in the summers, worked at Jesse's diner, worked all through the summers, and she graduated from high school. And she thought she would go get a real job somewhere, but then she realized she really liked working at the diner. And she really enjoyed her time at Jesse's Diner, and the customers loved her, and she was making good money, so she kept working there. She worked there full time, and she worked, and she worked, and she worked, and you know what? Before you know it, Doodles had been working at Jesse's Diner for 40 years. 40 years. And so finally, at 40 years, she walked up to Jesse, and she said, Jesse, I've been here for 40 years, I'm going to retire. And Jesse said, no, you can't retire, you're the best we have, everybody loves you. She said, no, I've got to retire. And he said, well, what are you going to do? She said, I'm buying a house down at the beach. And he said, okay, Doodles, if you're going to retire, we're going to throw a party for you, big one. And they did, big going away party. Invited all of Jesse's friends, customers, all of Doodles' family, friends, and her customers. And they all came to the diner for this huge party one night in honor of Doodles. They had the big party, they celebrated the party, and then little by little, people started to leave until there were only 2 people left at the diner, Jesse, the owner, and Doodles. And Doodles went over to Jesse, and Jesse handed Doodles her final check for working at the diners. 40 years she'd been there. Doodles took the check, started to walk out of the diner, but like she had done every Friday for 40 years, she stopped at the last table, pulled a paper napkin out, doodled something on the napkin, stuck it in her pocket, and went out the door. Now, it was 11 o'clock at night, so she couldn't go to the bank. But the next morning, she got up, and she went straight into the bank. She asked to see the bank manager, and the bank manager came walking out, all dressed up in his fancy suit. He looked at Doodles, and he said, how can I help you? And Doodles said, I'd like to close my accounts. And he looked at her, he said, close your accounts? She said, yeah, close your accounts. You know, I retired. He said, well, I know. I was at the party last night. It was a great party. And Doodles said, well, I'm moving. I bought a house at the beach, a really nice house right on the beach overlooking the water. And that bank manager looked at Doodles and he said, Doodles, what are you talking about? He said, you didn't buy any beach house. He said, a beach house? Are you kidding me? Those things cost a ton of money. He said, you've been working as a waitress at that dumpy little diner for 40 years. He said, you're not buying a beach house. And Doodles looked at him and she said, well, yes, sir, in fact I am. And that's why I'm closing my accounts, because I'm going to open new accounts at the beach. And so the bank manager got a little frustrated and he walked up to the computer and he said, okay, Doodles, he said, give me your account number. Doodles reached into her pocket. She pulled out that little paper and she said, actually, I have 3 accounts. And she called out the numbers of the accounts, and the bank manager punched the numbers into the computer, punched them into the computer. All this information came up on the computer screen. He looked at it, he looked at Doodles, he looked back, and he said, Doodles, give me those numbers again. And so Doodles called off the numbers, he punched all the numbers in, and same information popped on the screen. And he looked over at Doodles, he said, Doodles, there's some problem. She said, what's the problem? He said, well, you saw me, I did it twice, put those numbers in. He said, something must be wrong. And she said, what is wrong? He said, well, I punched those account numbers into my computer twice. And he said, and the same thing happened both times. This computer is telling me that the total value of your account in our bank right now is $1,985,462. And Doodles pulled that paper out of her pocket, and she looked at it, she said, $1,985,462. She said, that's right. Now, would you please write a check for me? That bank manager went to his office, and he wrote a check for $1,985,462. The biggest check he ever wrote in his life as a bank manager. And he came out, he handed the check to Doodles. And Doodles took the check and she thanked him and she started to walk out of the bank for the last time. But right before she got to the door, she turned around and she looked back at the bank manager and she said, hey, by the way, if you ever get down to the beach, stop by and see me, okay? And she walked out of the bank. Now let me tell you something. Doodles didn't earn all that money in 1 year. She didn't earn all that money in 5 years. Doodles worked every day, but every time she worked, she saved and she put that money in the bank. And before you know it, she had enough. And that's the same thing that will happen to you if you start your saving now. Saving requires time. So we're going to give first, then save, and then spend at the end. That's the rhyme for the day. Spend at the end. And on what do we want to spend our money? I hope that all of you will spend your money on things you need, primarily, and occasionally on something you want. There's nothing wrong with wants. They can motivate. The problem comes in when people, young and old, spend money on things they don't need with money they don't have, and in order to pay for it, they use a tiny piece of plastic. And those credit cards destroy families and ruin lives. There's nothing wrong with a credit card. I have 2 in my wallet. There's something wrong with using a credit card to pay for something that you don't need with money you don't have. And I gave you an example on the test. If you run out and spend $1,000 on a credit card, and when the bill comes in, you choose to make just the minimum payment, here's what will happen. If your interest rate is 18% or more, it will take you 20 years to pay that off. If you think making the minimum payment on $1,000 credit card charges is a good idea, then I have a suggestion. Go do it. Get a credit card. Go shopping. Get some electronics. Bring them all home. Plug them in. Charge them up. Get some clothes, all you want. Bring them home. Try them on. Check them out. Get some food. Bring it back. Get a pizza. Bring the pizza home and eat everything. Eat all that food. Eat that pizza. Eat the whole pizza except for one slice of pizza. And take that one slice of pizza, put it back in the pizza box, and stick the pizza box on the top shelf of your closet. And don't eat that last slice until you make the last payment on the credit card 20 years later. Gross. I know. It's gross. It's gross. But you know what? It's also gross to make the minimum payment because you're still paying for the pepperoni and cheese 20 years later. So why don't you eat it then? So we need to spend at the end. Give, save, spend. That's how we manage money. How about multiplying money? Multiplying money. Best advice I ever got when I was 19 years old. 19. I met a man out in Texas who had done very, very well in business. He told me, he sat me down at dinner one night and he said, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? And I looked at him, I said, I'm going to be a professional tennis player. He said, well, that doesn't matter. I said, no, seriously, I'm going to be a professional tennis player. He said, it doesn't matter what you do. And I looked down and I said, you don't understand. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a professional tennis player. And he said, Chad, it doesn't matter what you do. And I'm thinking to myself, who is this 55-year-old goat trying to talk me out of my dream? And I looked down and I said, what do you mean? He said, doesn't matter what you do. Doesn't matter if you're a plumber or if you're a tennis player or you're a surgeon. He said, in every case, he said, there's going to be a ceiling as to how much money you can make based on the number of hours there are in the day to do what you do. Eventually, the day will end. If you're a plumber, you can only fix so many toilets a day. If you're a surgeon, you can only do so many surgeries a day, then the day ends. The dollar amount between the plumber and the surgeon are different, but in both cases, there's a limit. And then he told me something I'll never forget. He said, Chad, until you learn how to make money while you sleep, you will never really get ahead. And what that brilliant 55-year-old man was trying to tell this arrogant 19-year-old was that if you don't learn how to invest now, early, as a teenager, you never really get ahead. And you can do that. You don't need a lot of money to invest. You could have bought one share of Google when it came out. You'd be loaded. All right? It's time. It must start now. So, final words for you on financial literacy. I wrote it on the first or second page of my book. Some people retire at age 40. Good for them. Most people work until they're 67. And some people have to work until the day they die. That's not the group you want to be in if you will make, manage, and multiply and protect your hard-earned money. So good luck to you. Thank you for having me here today. God bless everyone. Stay where you are. Stay where you are.